In this video, I'm going to talk about something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, and that is the exploitation of artists. So I was watching Tyler Eden on YouTube, and I recommend going and watching his channel and watching that video if you want. But this is basically my response to that video. And I've been working as an artist for a long time, but with some caveats. And that's because of sort of my experience with the art world and what I learned from art and from, participating in that world. So the very first time I sold art when I was commercially was when I was 14. I produced some art for some stores. Then I proceeded to try, and I had been drawing my whole life, and I proceeded to try and draw comics and learn how to draw comics, taught myself how to draw comics. And in the meantime, I had also managed to get a job with a game company. This was in the late 80s. And that's when some things started to click for me. Because at that point, I had already had a quote-unquote real job. And I've got notes here if you're wondering. I had and I had some life experience. I had already run a company, a very successful company. And so I had a taste of sort of working for myself. And what I noticed was in the comic books, I started investigating the artists. And some of the top, at the time, the best artist, I think, was John Byrne. I hope I'm enunciating his name. Whenever I hear their names being said, I've always been seeing them wrong. Anyway, he was one of the bigs, right? So at that time, they would pay about $100 a page for pencils and stuff. He would make more, obviously, because he's very famous, but he didn't make a lot more. He made a lot of money and was very successful because he drew so many pages. And the game company that I worked for wanted my art and didn't want to pay me for it. They were talking about exposure. And at the time, I was really young, but at the time I was like, exposure? What are you talking about? So it was a very minimal amount of money, and the discussion was exposure. So I started looking around, and all this time I had continued to draw because I enjoy drawing. That's why I draw. And so I continued. Actually, it's a little more complicated than that, but drawing was an escape for me from sort of terrible circumstances. But anyway, but I enjoyed it, right? And then I went on from there, and I've sold more art and whatever, and then I worked as a graphic artist, and I've just continued. I've been on Patreon, and I ran a Patreon for a long time. Now I'm doing my YouTube channel, whatever. But I've never actually, aside from working as a graphic artist, which caused me to stop drawing for 10 years. Which is amazing. But when I started getting paid for it, I stopped. So what happened was investigating comics and looking into what it would take for me to get into comics. Because at the time, I had a friend that had broken into Marvel Comics. And he was proceeding to draw for them. And so I had sort of very close sort of connection with it. And I realized he wasn't being paid anything, and he was working his ass off. He was doing like 18 hours to get a page out. It's like, and he's not being paid anything. And so I just did a quick calculation of the number of people that were like John Byrne or Buscema or somebody who's just really great and making a lot of money, Jim Sterling, and it was low. There was just a top little, maybe 1%, and they still weren't making anywhere near the money that they should have, in my opinion. And my grandfather was a very successful businessman, and I'm very fortunate he took me under his wing and sort of explained some things to me. And so one of the things I realized was that all artists are exploited, and I wondered, why is that? Well, I have to say not all artists are exploited. The artists that aren't exploited are the ones that work for themselves. The artists that don't look for a paycheck. The artists that start something on their own. And so at the time in the 80s, I'll give you an example, was Franzetta. Franzetta is an amazing artist, and the game company I was working for wanted to get Franzetta to do a cover. But at the time, in the 80s, he charged $10,000 a painting for a cover. That's a lot of money back then, right? And I don't know what the equivalent would be today, you know, $20, $30 million. Inflation being what it is. Well, I don't know what it would be, but it would be a lot, you know? But he had worked for himself, and he had created this market for his art. He charged so much because he knew if he did a cover, or the people knew if he did a cover, it would sell better. And yeah, it would sell better. Think of how many RPG games you've seen with a Franzetta cover on it. I'll give you a few minutes. How many have you seen with a Frank Franzetta cover? $10,000, it would have sold like hotcakes. Okay? But you can get another artist a lot cheaper. And this is the other thing about RPG games that's kind of fascinating, is usually the art that people like is very intensive. I mean, it takes a long time to produce. A lot of fine details, especially in the OSR. So, and I've been approached by people, oh, would you draw this? Would you draw that? I quote a price and they're just out because they didn't intend that. And I usually quote at least half of what I would as a graphic artist. As a graphic artist, my drawings, this is in the 90s, my drawings, like when I would do a design for somebody, at least $500 to $1,000 or more was what I was working for somebody, but that's what they were charging. Right? And it would get turned into a logo or whatever. But you can't do that. You can't do that in the tabletop RPG scene, right? So what are you making art for? You know, you have to be making it for yourself. You have to be doing it because you love to make art. Now we come to Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast, big company. You know, they're worth, I don't know, lots of money, or they were. I don't know what's going on now with it. I don't really pay attention to them. but whatever, you know, the feeling is, and people's feeling is that, oh, they ought to be able to pay more money than that. You know, and they probably can. Marvel Comics could certainly pay more. DC Comics could certainly pay more. Game companies could certainly pay more. But here's the kicker. Why don't they pay more? Well, it's because, and now I don't mean to be crass here, but most artists, okay, in my opinion, from my experience, act a little bit like addicts. They're addicted. They have an impulse in them, and I certainly do too. I have to create. It drives me nuts not to create stuff. I love it. I love it. But then artists have this other need, which is very fascinating, and I've worked very hard to not have that need, and that is to show it. Who cares? You cannot expect not to be exploited if you have a drive to create stuff and a drive to show it off. How do you negotiate? What have you got to negotiate? Nothing. And I learned this very early on, so I went and got a job that had nothing to do with arts. And that's what I recommend for artists. If you're an artist, go get a ticket. Go become a welder, go become an electrician, go become a plumber, go become something like that, so that you can't be exploited. You can walk away from the table and you can feel good, right? You can feel good about yourself, because are you going to become a John Buscema? Are you going to become a Frank Franzetta? Odds are no, right? But you can work literally 1 week a month if you have a ticket like that and earn more than 99% of artists out there, freelance artists, whatever. You just can, right? And you don't feel bad. You're not being paid for brain power and not using your brain power. You're just, you know, you go out, you do some stuff, you come home, you do your artwork. Where you get caught up in my opinion, where artists get caught up is where they have this driving need to create, which is fine, and then they have this driving need to show it. And so people will say, companies will say, well, you want your art to get out there. You want people to see your art. Why? Ask yourself, why does it matter? You're enjoying it. You like to draw. If somebody wants your artwork, great. Then you can negotiate, right? Maybe you can get a commission, right? But it should include royalties, right? It should. I mean, if you're going to do a cover, if Frank Franzetta does a cover, he's charging $10,000 a picture because he's not getting a royalty. Why shouldn't an artist get a royalty? Why shouldn't they? Musicians do. Right? And look how exploited they are. Why? Same reason. They want to be seen. They want to get out there. And the thing is I'm not advising this as to be like a successful artist and you're going to go out there and make tons of money, because I sure as hell haven't. I'm just saying I feel good about my art. I spent 10 years not being able to draw because I had been, in my opinion, very exploited. And I was sick of it. And it actually made me hate art. And it took a long time for me to get back into it. And I got back into it because I like to create for RPGs. I like to create drawings. I realized it after, it's basically Carl Jung. I read Carl Jung. He said, if you want to find your mission in life, if you want to find what's really important to you, go back to your childhood. And what did you spend your hours and hours on that made the days go by? For me, it was art. And I realized, wow, I really like art. Well, why did I stop? Because I don't like being exploited. So I've got a job. I've got a meathead job. I make more money than probably most artists. I know for a fact I do, right? And I can just create whatever I want. And I share it with you guys here on YouTube if I want. If I don't want, I don't. Right? Now, people say, oh, well, artists, you have to, they waste their talent. Waste their talent how? If you, as an artist, are enjoying creating art, making the art, it's not a waste. It's not a waste. Okay? If you want notoriety and you want fame and you want everybody, ooh, look at this drawing, look at this guy's art, he's so incredible. If you want that, that's not about the art, that's about you. And I suggest working on it. I suggest figuring out why you need that so badly. What's the point? What do you hope it's going to get you? Do you like making art? Make the art. If somebody wants the art, negotiate. What's a decent price for it? What are your royalties going to be? And odds are they're going to walk away and say, I don't want that. And why would they? And this is the trick. This is why companies exploit artists, is because right behind you are a million other people that are super hungry for that attention. They want the attention. That's what gets them. It's almost like an addict, It would be it would be like someone going to their dealer and complaining that their dealer's ripping them off. Yeah, because you're addicted. Of course he's ripping you off. That's how it works. They don't rip a plumber off. They don't rip a welder off. They don't rip a carpenter off. Why? Because that person can just walk away. And there aren't a million people behind them. And there's not AI. That's a whole nother subject, right? So what I'm saying is that this dynamic has been going on since as long as people have been putting pigment on canvas. If you want to get famous as an artist, you need that attention. Needing that attention, wanting to get that attention makes you exploitable. Right? The only way that you won't get exploited is if you can walk away. It's just negotiations 101. If you're hungry, they always talk about, the starving artists. There's all these starving artists. And in the past, all these starving artists, and there's still starving artists, people trying to make it. And, good on them. If you want to make it, if you want to go that route, go for it. This is just from my experience. I'm not meaning to upset anybody. This is just personal. And that is, I have learned that you have to be able to walk away. It's that simple. And now with AI art and with Photoshop and all that, you see the quality of art is just getting better and better. Well, I'll tell you, the quality of artist is not. It's technology doing that, right? So the art is getting better and better. You look at art and you go, oh my God, that's amazing. But then you start diving into how it's made, and well, you know, it's a lot easier than actually putting pen to paper and actually, you know, using those old school techniques. So again, now it's even more competitive. And now apparently, from what I hear, Wizards of the Coast is talking about using AI art. And I know people hate AI art, but it's going to happen. I hate to say it. It's going to happen. So how do you battle AI art? Well, the only way is to bring humanity to your art. You have to be human in your art. That's the only way you're going to be able to battle AI art. And even then, all these companies are just, they're going to gravitate to it. I'm sure of it, right? So, you know, it's here to stay. So that's just what I have learned as an artist, is that you have to be your own boss. You have to be able to walk away. If you don't want to be exploited, you have to stop acting like an addict. You can't be attention seeking, wanting all the attention and everything else. I mean, it's fine if you want to, but my personal experience is if you do that, you're going to be exploited, right? I mean, that's how business works. Business, that's how business works. I mean, every employee has to add value to the company they work for. You can never, ever get 100% of the value you give to a company, or the company would go broke. That's just how it works, right? There's some people with some utopian sort of ideas where that wouldn't be the case. The only place I know where that isn't the case is where the person works for themselves. Like Franzetta commanding $10,000 a painting. I mean, that's great, right? Good on him, you know, and other comic book artists that can command. But remember, I mean, that's how Image Comics started. Image Comics started because the top of the top, the best of the best, were sick of getting ripped off. And you just have to look at all the arguments, you know. Did Jack Kirby, I'll do a Kirby. Did Jack Kirby, Kirby, I love his art. Did Jack Kirby, you know, did he create Spider-Man, right? You look at the Spider-Man, you know, the Marvel method for creating comic books, where Stan Lee would just give out an idea and he left it up to the artist to create the artwork. That's in my opinion, extremely exploitive. And then to walk away and say, yeah, I created that. It's just another example. And when I was looking at becoming comic book artist, and I had real potential, you know, I had a friend in Marvel. He was looking at my stuff. He's like, yeah, it's really good. You know, you're gonna get there. And I walked away from it. It looked like a complete disaster to me. Why do I want to create cool heroes? I had all kinds of heroes in my head. I still do. And I enjoy them very much. And I enjoy my art very much. And I enjoy sharing my art on YouTube very much. And I enjoy having drawings around. And I enjoy creating D&D games. And I enjoy this stuff. But I don't need attention. I've got my YouTube channel because it motivates me. I love sharing stuff with the people that want to see it. But if people don't want to see it, I'm not going to mold myself so that they'll watch me. I've had people suggest, oh, you need a script. Why? I don't need a script. That's not what I want to do. That's not what I'm about. I'm about just off the cuff, making stuff when I want to make it, not when I don't. And I'm happy. I'm happy. I haven't been exploited. I love to draw still. Love it. So, you know, but I didn't start my own company or anything to, you know, and that's a downside because I just simply don't have the time to do that. Would I be successful? I have no idea. I don't really care. You know, I got to raise my daughter. I got to have a happy time. And now I'm really having fun doing all this stuff with my YouTube channel. And, you know, if somebody wants me to create art for them, yeah, okay, we'll talk. But I'm not desperate. You know, and odds are, I have had quite a few people, you know, come at me to do stuff, and they look at it and they, why would I? No, I will find somebody else. Yeah, great. Please do. Please do. Yeah, so that's it. That's why I think artists get exploited. And is it too bad? Yeah. Does the world lose out on good art? Yeah, I think they do. I think they lose out on a lot of art. I don't feel like I'm alone in thinking this. Maybe I am. It's kind of unusual for, I suppose, an artist to not care about leaving a legacy of art behind, or care about getting noticed, or care about showing off their art and everything like that. I suppose that's unusual. But it's also kind of unusual for an artist to understand that you can't be desperate for that stuff. If you're desperate for that stuff, you're just going to end up, you're going to end up working away for decades, and you're never really going to make all that much money. You're really not. Even if you get a big name, even the big name guys, you look at guys, they're maybe making $500,000 a year. If you look at what they're producing for the company that's hiring them, it's off the charts. They are the company. I see that all the time. You'll see a game company making millions and millions of dollars, right? Because, it's such an incredible art style, and it's, the game's so beautiful. Wait a minute. Why is it so beautiful? Is that worth $500,000? You got a game that's made, say, $50 million, and you've got an artist that took, and that's the other thing that people don't realize. Like, I've got sketchbooks with ideas in them, and notebooks, and I've got tons of ideas. If I take that to a company and I say, hey, look, here's my idea, what am I going to be paid for it, right? Next to nothing. It's going to get blown up in this huge thing, and I'm not going to get. So why? I'm happy, right? Doing my thing, whatever it is, you can decide, right? Yeah. So, that's just my own personal experience, and I wanted to react to that. If you work for Wizards of the Coast, if you work for a big game company, if you work for anybody, you're going to struggle. You're going to have these little cartoon characters that you made when you were a kid, and then you're going to develop them all through high school. It's going to be so cool, right? And you make them, and you draw them, and you've got this really cool style. You go to art school, you pay a whole bunch of money to get trained to do something that really, a few books will teach you how to do, and a lot of practice, and just have a sketchbook and just fill it up. You spend all this money, right? Because just having to go to school sort of forces you to focus on your art. In my opinion, that's most of what art school is good for. It just forces you to pay attention. Well, a little bit of discipline will help with that too, right? And save you a whole bunch of money. But you get all this money, then you go to a game company, they look at your little cartoon drawing, they say, hey, that's great. That's great. We'll use that. And yeah, I'm getting noticed. That's something that came from you that took most of your life to create. You're going to maybe be able to make something more, something as good, but maybe not. You can't count on it, right? And what are you making? A good wage? Yeah, right? It's the addiction. It's the addiction to creating, which artists have. Right? It's that driving need. You take a guy like Elon Musk, let's say. He's got a driving need. He's got a driving need to make money, right? That's a businessman for you. It's not so much art, it's making money. Well, artists have this thing to create art, which is pretty much the opposite of creating money, right? Yeah. So anyway, I'm sure that this video is going to piss some people off. If it pisses you off, go ahead and leave a comment. If you like it, go ahead and leave a comment. If you have something to add, I'd love to hear it. And that's my video. I just wanted to react to it. That's my personal experience from being an artist for, a few decades. All right, take care. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. I would really appreciate it. It helps my channel out. And that's it. Thank you.